Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Audrey Levitin, and on behalf of Shomrei Emunah and its Social Action Committee, I'm pleased to welcome all of you to a presentation this morning by the Parent Circle, a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization made up of more than 600 bereaved families who have chosen a path of reconciliation. Shomrei Social Action Committee develops programs that engage our congregation in issues that are of concern to our community. And in addition to this morning's program, include food insecurity and homelessness and the needs of refugees and immigrants. If you would like to become involved, please reach out to me or call Shomrei's office and leave a message, and I'd be happy to talk with you. We're now going to turn to today's program. If you, throughout the program, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. And the co-chair of the Social Action Committee, Sarita Eisenberg, will be fielding those questions. I am now pleased to introduce Anita Silvert, who is our host with the American Friends of the Parent Circle, and will tell us a bit about the organization and the program. Anita, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm so glad to be with you this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're logging in from. I have been working with the Parent Circle for a while. I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the projects that Parent Circle in Israel and Palestine take part in and are involved in, so that you know what kind of work we do and how vast it is and how many people it really impacts. One of the things Parent Circle over there does is runs a summer camp every summer for teens between 14 and 18, both Palestinian and Israeli children, and it gives them a chance to talk to kids their own age. It's also fascinating for Israeli kids, teenagers who are going to be facing army service soon, that gives them an opportunity to meet Palestinian teenagers and gives them sort of a framework to begin their army service with, just sort of an awareness, which is what our organization is all about. We also run a narrative project where people get to record and their stories. We have a women's project that brings Palestinian and Israeli women together for their unique ability to talk to each other as mothers and sisters and wives. And in general, a lot of schools, a lot of visits to schools, both in Israeli and Palestinian communities. Another thing that we've been doing for a while is when tour groups come through, and primarily American Jewish touring, missions come through, they meet with Parent Circle members so that as we go through, as we've all been most likely to Israel and we've gone through the tour, this is an opportunity to see a different side and also to, again, open our awareness. The whole purpose of Parent Circle is to realize the humanity and the other person at the other side of the table, to realize that we can occupy the same speaking space and open our hearts to each other. This is a brave and courageous choice that our members are making to go from their grief and to say no to the revenge and the hatred and the constant cycle of violence and turn towards peace activism and realizing that it won't stop until we start talking. And now I turn it over to Rabbi, right?
Thank you, Anita. It's truly an honor and a pleasure for me to share this space with you and to have this take part. I'm trying to deal with buttons at the same time that I'm speaking, and to have this program happening under Shomrei's auspices. I want to give a big thank you, a yasher koach, to Audrey and to Sarita, our social action co-chairs, who have made all the efforts involved to get this program here. And we're still working on it. As I understand, we're still waiting for our two speakers. So we're looking forward to their logging on soon. We are in the midst of a holiday, the holiday of Sukkot, And Sukkot is a holiday that gets its name from the Sukkah. A Sukkah is a ramshackle booth that we construct, and we construct it on purpose to be ramshackle. To make a Sukkah what it is in its essence, it must not be a sturdy and impregnable structure. A sukkah must be open to the elements. Its roof, when we talk about putting a roof over our heads, that's how we think about shelter. Its roof must be flimsy. Its roof must be open to the outside. And so Sukkot is a holiday that reminds us that we need to be at this Zman Simchatenu, this time of our greatest happiness. We need to be able to be open to the outside. We need to be able to be vulnerable. We need to be able to invite into our space others. The idea of inviting guests to Spisen is a sacred practice on Sukkot. So Sukkot is a tremendously appropriate time for us to engage in learning about Parent Circle Families Forum, because that organization, those people exemplify, as Anita said, the courage that it takes to be both vulnerable and open and inclusive and welcoming, ready to hear the other person, ready to see the other person. Just yesterday, we read a Torah reading, which has one of the most extraordinary stories in the Torah. Moses says to God, "Who are you? Tell me who you really are. Show me your glory." And God says something that's very famous. Many people remember this one line. God says, "You can't see my face and live because you're a human being. I'm God, you're a human being." So we take away from that God is not in the form of a human, that God doesn't have a shape, but we should take away something else as well. And that is that if we want to live, then we have to be able to see other human beings' faces. We can't see God's face and live, but we have to see other human beings' faces in order to live. We have to see each other as created in God's image. That's as close as we're going to get to see God, by seeing each other. So Families Forum Parent Circle is an organization that takes this teaching literally to heart. Over the years, I've drawn tremendous strength from the miracle of this organization's existence. So many of us can feel defeated, can feel depressed, can feel despondent and pessimistic about the world, and specifically about the Middle East situation. And to have in front of us people who know how hard it is, who know how tragic reality can be, and who nevertheless stand up with their hearts open, with their hands outstretched, to have those people exemplify what it is as a possible human response. To me, that has given me tremendous strength and tremendous hope over the years. During COVID, of course, it was very, very difficult for people to get together, but I attended by Zoom, as we're doing this, the Memorial Day gathering in Israel, which is specifically a Memorial Day for all those who have suffered losses. Of course, there are many, many gatherings in Israel where Israelis take the time to mourn their loved ones. And it's a very poignant and tragic moment. It leads straight into Israel Independence Day. The genius of Parent Circle was to take that day and make it into an inclusive day. And to say we have all known pain and loss. We have all loved and then found that love shattered by tragic circumstances. Let's take that as our common ground first, and then let's see if we can build a better reality. So I want to also just encourage people to go to the website of Parent Circle. And one of the most powerful videos that I've seen only takes 1 minute. And it's a video of participants, members of the Parent Circle, who simply keep on saying in Arabic and in Hebrew, we don't want you here. We don't want you here. And of course, that sounds like such an exclusionary statement. And then just to give away the punchline, what they say is, we don't want you here in a group of bereaved family members. We don't want you here anymore. We want to be able to have a time when we can embrace and share our joy. This Sukkot holiday is supposed to be a time of joy and rejoicing for the whole world. It's a holiday that encompasses our celebrations for the entire world. This is what the tradition teaches us. So may we see that happen speedily in our time. I'm looking, Anita's going to give me some heads up here about what
I just wanted to continue what you were saying, Rabbi. This is one of the few, Robbie's on. Good morning, Robbie. Good evening, Robbie. And Bassam should be joining us any minute. I was just going to talk just a second about what you were saying, Rabbi. Yeah, this is one of those organizations in the world that does not want new members. And nobody wants, none of our members, and Robbie will of course speak to this, but this is the kind of club you never want to be in. And in addition to that, because I'm sure Robbie and Bassam will speak to this, but their shared pain and their grief is what gives their voices authority. And this is why the message that they have to impart to you today is so important, because—
Sorry, excuse me interrupting you, Anita, please. Does Bassam have the right Zoom link?
You know, I sent it to him, the one that Lila was going to use. So
yes. Is that possible for him to use the same one? Hi, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, Robbie. We're just doing this, you know, as usual, 8,000 miles apart. I gave him the link that Lila had, if that was supposed to work.
Does that work if it goes to another email? Because
does that? Somebody from Shomrei is going to have to tell me that. I don't know.
I believe it will work. They just have to follow the link, the custom link that was sent to the other participant.
Okay, well then he should be on soon. I will let, I'll turn this back over. And hi, Robbie, nice to see you.
So perhaps my suggestion is that the order of speakers be reversed, and let's start with Robbie first, and hopefully by a little bit later, Bassam will be able to join us. So let me introduce Rabbi Damelin to everyone. Rabbi Damelin's son David was killed by a Palestinian sniper in 2002 while guarding a checkpoint near a settlement during his Army Reserve service. Rabbi speaks to Israelis, Palestinians, and audiences all over the world to demand that reconciliation be a part of any peace agreement. Rabbi was named a 2015 Woman of Impact by Women in the World. So again, I encourage people, listen. If you have questions, the Q&A button is where you should be going. And we now are honored and humbled to welcome Rabbi to our program. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. I wish I could see you all. How can I possibly see you all? What about if I do the view? Because it's, oh, here's a whole thing of me. That's too much.
This is a webinar, so the participants can't see the participant.
Ah, all right. Well, I suppose it's better than the other night when I spoke to a university and everything was black because it was classrooms that didn't have a camera. So it was like I was talking to myself. But at least I can see you at the top. And I really apologize for Lila not being able to be on today. She's not well, and she just came back from Jordan, and you know, it's quite a nightmare to come through the Allenby Bridge at the best of times. and it's very hot, and I guess that she doesn't feel well. So I don't know exactly where to start, because you more or less told everybody everything about me, but I'll try to tell you a little about how people can change. Because if you think that people can't change, there's not much point in doing this work. In my own case, it really was from early childhood. By now, you understand that I was not born in Israel. This accent doesn't suit the normal Israeli expectancy. I was born in South Africa and grew up very much in the anti-apartheid days. It was pretty dangerous in those days. You could disappear for 180 days. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just a kid and I thought I was very brave, but it was extremely stupid because I was not very tactful and I could have been in a lot of serious trouble. But I knew from a very early age that there was something wrong with what was happening in South Africa. And then it got to the point where the 6-day war broke out, and I decided to volunteer to come and volunteer on a kibbutz in Israel and save Israel in the war. And actually, I ended up working in a chicken house, which I suppose I was pretty brave because they kept biting my arm every time I tried to take their eggs. I really didn't have any intention of staying here. I knew I wanted to leave South Africa because it was getting a bit worrisome. And I wanted to go to the States or to England, but somehow I just stayed. And here's Bassam. Yay. So actually what happened is that I suppose I got my first job at the Jerusalem Post. And in those days, it was a much more liberal newspaper. And then I got married and had 2 kids, 2 boys. And I remember when Sadat came to Israel and stood on the plane and the doors opened. And I thought to myself, I was sitting on the couch with my little boys. Sadat was the president of Egypt. And I thought, wow, you know, here's your worst enemy came to Israel. Maybe my kids will not have to go to the army. And I remember the tears pouring down my eyes, and it was almost something unbelievable. So then I don't know exactly how this all happened, but I remember standing at the bus stop when Iran, my oldest son, was going to the army and not believing that a child of mine would go and carry a gun and be involved in any kind of war or violence. And I remember standing there with David and crying and not wanting this to happen. And there was a 1.5 year difference between my 2 boys. And then David had to go to the army. So I had 2 kids in the army together. It was a very difficult time. It was in the first Intifada and partly into a very dangerous time. And thank somebody, I don't know, they actually finished their army service. And like many Israeli kids, they went, one to South America and one to India. Now, this is such a common thing for kids that have served in the army. You know, I mean, I wish American kids could understand how lucky they are that they can go to university at the age of 18 and that they won't have to carry what Israeli kids have to carry or what Palestinian kids have to carry until they are, I don't know how old, probably forever. That trauma lasts. David came back from South America and decided to study and went to Tel Aviv University and studied philosophy, and he was doing his master's in the philosophy of education and was called to go to serve in the reserves like other Israeli kids. And it was the first time that he had to do his reserves in the occupied territories. And he came to talk to me. And he was in such a quandary. What shall I do? if I don't go, what will happen to my students? He was teaching students who were going to be inducted into the army. And if I don't go, what happens to my soldiers? Because he was the officer, and if I do go, I will treat people with dignity, and so will all my soldiers. And here comes the scene where you think you know who the person is behind the gun, but I assure you that you don't. And it was such an enlightening moment for me after he was killed, something like 3 years. There was a Palestinian sitting in the audience at the embassy in Tel Aviv, where I came to give a talk, and he wanted to tell me something, and I knew it, and he came to me and he said, look, I just want to tell you that the night before your son was killed, I drove through the checkpoint, and this very tall young man came to my car and said, I have to see your papers. I'll do it as fast as I can. For me, it's like paying income tax. It's kind of a duty. And they got into a conversation, which led to a very deep conversation. And then he said, and this is a Palestinian, the next day when I heard that your son was killed, I was so sorry. And that is the essence of the work that we do in the parent circle. It's the seeing the humanity in the other, because that's when the beginning of the end of conflict, actually. So when the army came to tell me that David had been killed by a Palestinian sniper, one of the first things that I said is, you cannot kill anybody in the name of my child. I had no idea that I said that, but that's what I was told afterwards. So there was something already happening, maybe based on my South African background and who I was and my sense of justice. I don't know. I knew very soon after David was killed that I wanted to do something to prevent other families, both Israeli and Palestinian, from suffering this pain, because there is nothing worse than losing a child. Nothing. I can fix loads of things, but I cannot fix this hole that is never filled. It's a decision you take what to do when you lose a child. Shall you die with your child, not physically, as many, many parents do, or will you try perhaps to prevent other families from going through this awful, dreadful pain and whose lives will never be the same? And I chose that. And I remember speaking at a huge rally, a demonstration in Tel Aviv to get out of the occupied territories. Must have been, I don't know, 2.5 to 3 months after David was killed. And I said there, we cannot do this alone. We have to share. The Palestinians and the Israelis, we must have a partner. So there was something already very clear to me right away. And then the parent circle came to see me because they'd seen this demonstration, but also the newspapers were filled with my views and what I thought, which were pretty unusual for somebody who just lost a child. And Yitzhak Frankenthal, who created this organization, a religious Jewish man, invited me to go to Palestine, to the East Jerusalem, to a weekend to meet other bereaved Palestinian and Israeli parents. And I went under duress because I didn't really want to go. And I remember sitting around this table and looking into the eyes of the Palestinian mothers and realizing that we shared the same pain. And that if we stood over a grave, the tears would be the same color. And that we could be the most powerful voice for change if we could stand on a stage and talk in the same voice to stop the violence and to look for reconciliation. Because if we could do it, the least likely people, then surely that would be an example for others to realize that we cannot continue to kill each other. I came back from that weekend very changed. It changed my life. In fact, I closed my office and I started to travel all over the world, and I thought I was really terribly important because I could speak English. I mean, you know, any idiot that was born in South Africa can speak English, but this happened to be like, you know, quite special. And I spoke in Congress and in the House of Lords and in Canada and in hip-hop concerts, always with the Palestinian partner, and always this message which we bring was accepted because it's not local. This is an international message, looking for a way to reconcile, looking for an understanding of the humanity of the other. One night I came home, I had been traveling all the time. I came home and there was another knock on my door. And when I opened the door, there were 3 soldiers standing there. When there are 3 soldiers, if you know anything about Israel or probably anywhere else in the world, it usually can only mean one thing. So I kept slamming the door in their face and they kept knocking. Eventually I opened the door and they said, we've come to tell you that we caught the man who killed David. And that's when it became difficult. Because that's when it is, do I mean what I say? You know, I can walk around the world talking about rainbows and flowers and love and peace and read bad poetry and do all of those things. But do I really mean it? And this was a huge quandary for me. I was in the state that how can I do this work if I'm not willing to walk the talk, because now there's a face of the man who killed my child. It took me 3 months and I wrote a letter to the family. And 2 Palestinians from our group delivered the letter. And of course, the family were very shocked, as you can well imagine. And they said that if everybody signs on this letter, perhaps there will be peace. I'm not the most patient character in the Middle East, and I, of course, expect a letter back from their son within days, and nothing happened, and there's no such thing as instant reconciliation. It can happen overnight, and it can never happen. And so, of course, I was down at my letterbox 3 days after the visit, but nothing happened, and it took 3 years, and I got a letter which came over a website, the most popular Palestinian website, in which Thayer, that's the name of the man who killed David, said that I was crazy. I mean, he didn't really need to tell me I was crazy. I already knew that. And that he killed 10 people on that day to free Palestine. But you see, I knew that when he was a very small child, he'd seen his uncle violently killed by the Israeli army. He lost another uncle in the second uprising, and a third uncle disappeared. As I think to this day, they have never found what happened to him. I think he went on a path of revenge, and I don't think that this was politically motivated, but it's irrelevant. He said I should stay away from his family, and that that was more or less what came in the letter. The interesting thing is, in the letter, I really told the family who David was. I told them about the parent circle, how many members, we have more than 600 members who have all lost an immediate family member to the conflict. And what is the vision of this group? We're not just a bunch of crooks who want you to feel sorry for us. We work in the general public so that they will understand that there has to be a framework for a reconciliation process to be an integral part of any future political peace agreement. We've signed stuff on the White House lawn. You've seen where that led. At best, it can only be a ceasefire. And so this is what we work for on the ground. And I'm hoping that we will have a question and answer where we can tell you what the actual work is on the ground with the Israeli and Palestinian public, because that's the most important part now that you will understand, because much of the work that we can do can be easily exported to other countries where they are suffering from polarization. And if we can be that example, that would be extraordinary, because also if you think about what's happening in the world now, how many thousands and thousands and thousands of bereaved families there are, and how we are going to have to cope with this and give solace to these families who maybe lost children or fathers and brothers and sisters where they couldn't even say goodbye. So can you even begin to imagine what that's all about? I know what that's all about. But, you know, and maybe if you give them advice to write a letter to the person they lost, or maybe if you just tell people to go and find these families, even if it's a completely different sort of family from who you are, find a way to just be there and be of service, not give any advice. I'm a
Robbie,
big advice giver, but
sorry,
it's,
just to interrupt, just 5 more minutes, and then we're going to let Bassam speak.
oh, but I thought I would go to speak for 1.5 hours. So now I lost my train of thought. So your exam is to tell me what I just said. Never mind. What happened?
You went
I
to
know.
South Africa now.
I'm just kidding you. So then I went to South Africa, where we went to meet people who had given evidence in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, perpetrators and victims, and we wanted to see where they are today and what we could learn from them for our own conflict. Were there lessons to be learned from the way that they handled the conflict? And we made a film called One Day After Peace, and I met an extraordinary woman, because for me, it was also about looking for the meaning of forgiving. Now, which everybody, I mean, if I could see you all and we sat in a room, I would ask you what your definition of forgiving is. And I met this extraordinary woman who had lost her daughter, and she went, the daughter was killed by APLA, which was the African wing, military wing of the African National Congress. And she'd gone to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and she said to the people who killed her daughter, I forgive you. And I wanted to know what she meant. And I went to meet her, and she said, forgiving is giving up your just right to revenge. And then the man who actually killed her, sent the people to kill her daughter, I met him as well. And he said, by her forgiving me, she released me from the prison of my inhumanity. I think that's an extraordinary statement. I came back to Israel. I decided it's time to meet Zaya. Tzipi Livni was the Minister of Justice. She said, okay, you will meet Bassam very soon, and you will understand why I asked for Bassam to be the go-between between me and the man who killed David. And we got permission. And then, of course, we were waiting for the police. And then, of course, I don't know how much you know about Israel, but how many elections we seem to have, which bring us ministers of justice who are really ministers of just us. So now we have a new government. I asked for permission again. It's a long story, but the police said that I cannot meet him unless he applies to meet me, hoping that they would fob me off, but they don't know me very well. So I called his lawyer, and the lawyer promised me that he would try to get Thaya to apply for me to visit. That's where the story is now. I'm so happy that Bassam is here, because for me, Bassam is nothing about the conflict. It's above the conflict. For me, Bassam is about love and about family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robi. I want to again remind people that you can comment and record your reactions in the Q&A. And Sarita Eisenberg, our co-chair of our Social Action Committee, will be collating those comments so that we can then present them to Robi and to Bassam. So now it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Bassam Aramin, who lives in Jericho in the West Bank. At the age of 17, he was incarcerated and spent 7 years in an Israeli jail. He went on to study history and holds an MA in Holocaust Studies from the University of Bradford, England. He became a member of the Parent Circle in 2007 after losing his 10-year-old daughter, Abir, who was killed by an Israeli border policeman in front of her school. Bassam devotes his time and energies to his conviction for a peaceful, non-violent end to the Israeli occupation of Palestine and to Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation. Bassam is the former Palestinian co-director of the Parent Circle Families Forum. So it is our honor, and again, I'm humbled to invite you to speak before us. Thank you, Bassam.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Robi. I'm also happy to meet you. In fact, always I believe that we are mirrors to each other. Our story, our pain, our life is very similar in Palestine and Israel and for many others around the world. So we learn from each other. We become similar to each other when we share our thoughts. I studied after many years that if you know more, you act better. If you don't know, so you don't know. And you act according to your story, to your narrative, to your history. The best thing is to understand the other narrative, to let yourself see the other narrative so you can act in a different way. In fact, yeah, I found myself as a fighter or a warrior when I was 13 years old by raising the Palestinian flag with other 4 kids. Our goal was to live in a safe place, free. We don't know what's the meaning of the occupation or to create a Palestinian state. This is how we start. And we don't need education to hate those occupiers. If they are Arabs, even if they are Muslims, if they are Americans, for us, we hate them just to see them from the street. And this hatred is grow up with you as long as they in front of your eyes. So as I said, we start to raise the flag because they get crazy when they see this flag. So we want to use the same tool to make them crazy. This is how we start. And the age of 16, we find some old weapons in a cave, especially I born in a cave myself. In a small family, we are 16 brothers and sisters only. So 2 of my friends used the 2 grenades which we find against the Israeli soldiers. And in that time, no one killed, no one injured because they don't know how to use it. And at the age of 17, we have been captured and sentenced to jail for 7 years, the others for 21 years, 19, 15, 14, and I get 7 years. In fact, in jail, I learned that if you know your enemy, you can defeat him or you can kill him. If you only hate him, you will kill yourself. So I start to study Hebrew to know how the language of the enemy and how to win over them or kill them, whatever. Then shortly I watch a movie about the Holocaust. I don't know how much you know what we know about the Holocaust. Briefly, even until today, after 73 years, we think it's a big lie, especially when we talk about 6 million. I am not a Jew, I am not Israeli, so I'm not interested to search about this fact or not fact, just to hear its lie, that's it, it's enough. In spite it's a big lie for me, I want to enjoy seeing this movie to see someone overcome those Jews who occupied us, defeat them, kill them, especially because I am in their jails in the personal level. But after a few minutes, what happened, I found myself crying, get sympathy with those innocent people. I cannot believe that they are human beings, can do the same to other human beings. I say to myself, it's just a movie, nothing like this in the reality. And this pushed me to try to research, to know if it's really happened or it's just a movie or propaganda for those occupiers to bring more support from Europe or United States, which lead me, as you mentioned, after so many years, to make my master degree about the Holocaust in Bradford University in the UK. It's a long 7 years in jail. It's only push you to be more determined to continue your armed struggle against this enemy, those people. When I say people, I mean the Israeli people or the Jewish nation, but their representative is the soldiers, settlers, which is very violent, and in jail, the jailers. Those are the Israelis or the Jews that the Palestinians know, because their goal is to kill our humanity every moment for us. But our goal was to survive in order to continue our struggle to liberate Palestine and to live free. I get released in 1992 after 7 years. I still believe in armed struggle as the only way. 92 Madrid conference for peace start. 93 we have Oslo agreement. So briefly, suddenly we have peace. We start to think in a different way, and we said finally now we start to live in peace. So I get married. Then I have 6 kids. Robi waiting for me to say which is worse than the Israeli occupation. It's a lot of responsibility. So in the personal level, your kids, your family become your Palestine, your promised land, your world. And I want to do everything possible to protect them. Unfortunately, if you live in Palestine, Israel, it's like you cannot protect yourself. And sometimes if you survive, it's by chance. In one point, I changed my mind, I can say 1994, after Oslo Agreement, after we have the Palestinian Authority, and I start to think about even our conflict, not in South Africa, not in Ireland, not in the States. More than 100 years in that time, we tried to kill each other. We did everything possible to defeat each other. I discovered that we forget to die. We're still here with more blood, with more pain, with more victims. So we need to change this way, maybe to survive together, maybe to find a solution. And I start to be active in my society, in the Palestinian side, without any connection with the Israelis until 2005. When we have the first meeting between 7 Israelis, ex-soldiers and officers, with 4 ex-Palestinian prisoners or freedom fighters. It was the most difficult meeting for each one of us. It takes 1 year meetings. We become 300 members. And in the end, we create a movement. We call it Combatants for Peace. And as Nelson Mandela says, our slogan was, if you want to make peace with your enemy, you need to work with your enemy. Then he became your partner. So our goal is to be partners, to prove that we can be partners, even we don't need to like each other. We don't need to love each other. We need to respect each other. Then we can be real partners. So we start to work. And 2 years later, in fact, I lost my 10 years old daughter, Abir, to an Israeli border police teenager from a distance of 15 to 20 meters, 9:30 in the morning. She was with her sister and 2 other girls in front of her school. And 2 days later, she passed away in Hadassah Hospital where she born. 2 days later, I joined the parents' circle because I know them 2 years before. One of the Israeli co-founders of Combatants for Peace was a bereaved brother. Then I get to meet his family, my brother Ramil Hanan. So I know the parents' circle, but I read about them a lot. Robi was a little bit famous in the Palestinian media, but in my worst dream, I don't want to join this amazing group because the ticket is very expensive. So from the first moment, I said, I wish Abir will be the last victim between the Israelis and the Palestinians. 2 years between Combatants for Peace and my tragedy, it was like learning about the other side. And always I said, it's a disaster to discover the humanity and the nobility of your enemy, because it's not going to be your enemy anymore. We discovered that we are just victims, try to kill each other to achieve the same thing. They want peace and security. We want peace and security. Of course, each one from his point of view. And here Rumi says, beyond right and wrong, there is a field. Let us meet there, or meet me there. Maybe we can find a way to survive together. In fact, when I meet the victim who killed my daughter in the Israeli court after 3.5 years, I said to him, I need you to know that you are not a hero, you are not a warrior. You didn't kill the enemy or the terrorist, you just killed 10 years innocent girl. And if you think it's okay to kill my daughter, enjoy your crime. I don't ask for revenge because I don't take revenge from victims. For me, you are not less victim than your victim. But in any day in your life, if you come to ask me to forgive you, always you will find me there. I will forgive you, but it's not because of yourself. It's because of myself, because I really love my daughter very much, and because I have another 5 kids. I want to raise them up in a different way. I don't want them to be victims to you as a victim. So in the parent circle, we try to spread a very simple message. We are not cowards because we love our kids. We have the moral authority to raise up our voice and to say no more blood. Because if we ask for revenge, which is very easy, we need to prepare our other kids to kill and to be killed. And in this way, we just kill our kids with our own hands, and we think we are very moral and we are high educated. And we want to prove that we can be partners, which is not imagination. Here I am, and Robi, she can represent me, I can represent her. Whatever she said, I agree, because we trust each other even as enemies. And imagine when the enemies love each other. Robi, I love you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Bassam. Thank you both, Bassam and Robi, for everything that you keep on doing. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A. I'm going to hand that process over to Sarita in a moment. But I'm going to take my own prerogative to ask a question first. And Bassam, you mentioned it a sort of a couple of minutes ago, and I want to ask both of you, either of you, you talked about the price that you pay for the courage that you live every moment, every day. I'd like to ask both of you to talk a little bit more about that, starting from perhaps your own family members, and how do they see what you're doing? How do they feel about the difficult choices that you have made, and then going on to what other friends or whatever, and of course the society. If you could talk more about that, we'd be grateful. Again, questions go into the Q&A.
When I face, let me say, in the personal level, like the occupation with my own hands, consider to be very brave. But when you start to talk, it's very difficult. It's more difficult. Everybody ready to fight, but not everybody have the courage to talk. And when you discover that, which is the hardest way, because when you, as I said, discover that there are human beings on the other side, which sometimes take decades to meet someone like Robi, like Rami. By the way, many Palestinian kids, when we go to a Palestinian school, they don't believe Rami or Robi is a Jew. Why? Because the Jewish on the checkpoint, they are different. They are killing machines. They don't talk to anyone. And the same when I talk to the Israeli kids, like they think or believe that I have a Jewish roots, because the Arabs are very brutal, they are killers, they are terrorists. So imagine what we know about each other, which is more difficult in the same society. You are against the culture, you are against yourself, your pain, your suffering, how you talk to the enemy, how you talk to your jailer, to your killer. But you need to be honest with yourself. We don't kill because of the friends. For that, we are unique. We are swimming against the current. But we know we are in the right way because many people who have the same ideas like I have before, when we invite them to our projects, our activities, they became very active because they discovered the other side. And as Robi said, the humanity in the other side. Very easy to become a partner with someone who share with you the same values. Simply, I love Palestine and I'm a Palestinian. I sacrifice everything because of the Palestinians. Robi the same. She's still Israeli. She is not Palestinian. And she wants everything good to Israel because she loves Israel. She wants to live in a moral place. Exactly like me. I want to live in a moral place. To replace the occupation with a dictatorship, we didn't achieve nothing. We want to live in a democracy, a free world, safe place with dignity. And in many ways, we said like my state for me is to live in a safe place. I want to send my kids to their school and get them back safe. But for these ideas, of course, you have a lot of resistance. In my case, I never lose a friend, and my friends, they are all ex-prisoners. Imagine I spent 7 years when I was 17. Like the Israelis, when they said my friend from the army, we said my friend from jail. And some of them, they are real people. And they said like, we trust you, we respect you, but are you serious? Did they listen to you? Did they believe in peace? Why you come to talk to us? Go and talk to them, because we want peace. And the same, of course, when we talk to the Israelis, you come to talk to us. We want peace. They don't want peace. So we discovered that the same majority who want peace, they don't trust each other. They scare from each other. And if this is the price of peace, we are ready to continue and sacrifice this price for peace, because we want to have the again the courage to look in front of our grandsons and daughters that we did everything possible to achieve peace, and I hope we will succeed.
You know, it's such an extraordinary thing, this mirror image. And I heard such a beautiful expression the other day, like every enemy is someone whose story I haven't heard. And if you think about that, that is exactly the work that we are doing in the Parent Circle, is this being able through narratives to understand the needs of the other with empathy, even if you don't agree. I mean, my family are very supportive. My grandchildren just went to the summer camp. We have a summer camp every year for bereaved children. And there were more than 40 kids there. And the most extraordinary part about it was there were 6 children from a Palestinian village called Bet Umar, where a young 11-year-old child was killed by an Israeli soldier who shot at his car. And actually, the grandfather of this child was already a member of the Parent Circle because he'd lost his son, and now he's lost his grandson. And these kids didn't want to come to the summer camp because they said it would be disloyal. And everybody worked with them over the whole week to get them to come. And it was so extraordinary. I schlepped all the way with Bassam to the Dead Sea, because that's where we had the summer camp this year, 50 degrees in the shade. And just to see how these kids recognize the humanity in the other, that was such a gift. You know, people don't realize that this is a gift, to be able to be a part in the change in somebody's life, in their transformation from hatred. How grateful I am that I can be part of some of that, and the extraordinary people that I've met all over the world. That is unbelievable. You know, I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am that I had all of these opportunities. And when I watch a mother who was filled with hatred come to the Parent Circle, and suddenly when she can tell her story so many times, and when people listen with empathy, she can talk about the child that she lost and not about how he died. What a gift that is, you know, to be a part of all of this. So that's how I feel, and my family support me. They reckon I'm not a great grandmother because I travel so much. So since the COVID, it's different. But I used to bring a lot of sweets from America. So then I was quite popular.
Thank you, Robi and Bassam, for sharing your stories with us. This is just really remarkable. There was a question, I'm going to be sharing some questions from the chat. There was a question that asked about the summer schools and the summer camp, and I wanted to broaden that question. You've talked about the camps to involve bereaved children, and I wondered about your efforts to reach children across the societies, Israeli children, Palestinian children, to perhaps try and change the narrative the negative narrative that they are growing up with?
Well, the incredible part is that we are working in schools, usually not with small children, with 17-year-olds, and that's specifically designed because these kids are going to the army. And they, if you will go into an average Israeli classroom and ask kids of 17, who of you have ever met a Palestinian? Guess what? Nobody. Who speaks Arabic? Maybe one in the class because their grandmother came from the Levant. And who's been overseas? 90% of the kids in the class. So this is their opportunity to meet somebody like Bassam, who they've never heard of. It's not on the media. And I'm sure their parents don't tell them about Bassam, or their parents don't even know about somebody like Bassam. And we do the same in the Palestinian side, in the occupied territories. I work a lot with women because I think it's time for women to come to the table. But if I go into an average Palestinian home, in the beginning, they're not so thrilled to see me. And then I might tell my story, and then they will say, wow, and they will recognize the shared pain. Because also, who have they ever been exposed to, either soldiers or settlers? Why would they think I'm any different? So yes, we do a lot of that work as much as we possibly can. And it's quite extraordinary. And one of the things about the summer camp with the kids is that many of them came to the summer camp when they were very small. And then Bassam's son is one of those Arab, came when he was a young kid. And as he grew up with the summer camp, he then became a facilitator. And now he's a young ambassador. And this is the question of continuation. It's not much point having a hummus and hugging session, and then everybody goes home. It's a lot of hard, plodding work. It's not glamorous. It can be we have 2 offices, one in Palestine, one in Israel. We have 2 directors. We have 2 spokespeople. We have 2 education control managers. This is not easy. It's much more expensive, but it's also much more dignified. It isn't for the Israelis to tell the Palestinians what's good for them. Nobody can sign a check without the other. Nobody can make a program without the other. It makes it very difficult, but at least that for what we can do as a gesture of dignified behavior, that's the best thing that we can do. We run a wonderful program for adults. It's a parallel narrative program, which could absolutely be exported to America in this whole polarized system that you have. And what it is incredibly important to get to know the other, but really to listen with empathy. We go to the Holocaust Museum as part of this program. Now, this is not for comparison of suffering. This is to understand the psyche and the DNA of fear in the Jewish mind. Then we go to a village that existed before 1948, which was a Palestinian village, which is now Israel, and there's nothing left there. And this is to let Israelis understand the price that the Palestinians paid in the Nakba, in the catastrophe. And this is such an important program. We have more than, I think it's 1,400 now graduates. We put all of this now online since Corona, which is really terribly difficult, but we are doing a lot of work. We just created a book for Kamala Harris. She got it this week. I'm so happy. We are 24 Palestinian and Israelis, 12 of each, and we pressed wildflowers, and each woman made a statement, a beautiful sentence in this book, and we sent it to her because we thought she's a woman, and it came from our women's group, which we have within the Barron's Circle. So there's so much work going on all the time. It's not easy. It's not easy because the situation is not an equal situation. The situation is terrible. I mean, in the past, this recent war that we had, 67 children died. 67 families are now left with a hole in their heart that will never heal. And how much hatred will come out of Gaza when these children grow up and never have an opportunity and never have hope, and how much hatred will come out of Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod, the Israeli towns on that border, of kids who spend so much time in shelters, weeing in their beds at the age of 12. You know, we don't understand the consequence of this war. And I think it's our duty to look at children and to decide how we can support them so that they can grow up in dignity. It's incumbent upon the world. There is a shortage of water. There are so many stories that I can tell you. And the question is, because I love Israel so much, I want us to live in a country where we allow for the human rights of the people on the other side. We have to look at the basic human right is movement, and a basic human right is water. And we cannot prevent Palestinians from having water.
Thank you. Bassam, I'm going to ask you also if you'll address that, but also we're actually sort of thrilled, not that we are happy that Lila is sick, but we're really thrilled that to have you as a male, right, here. Otherwise, it could perhaps give the idea that this is just mothers, just women. So I wondered, in terms of reaching people or changing the narrative, is it different? Does it have to be addressed differently to men and women, to boys and girls?
First, I want to say about you mentioned narrative, negative narrative. There is no negative narrative. There is a narrative, and there is a wrong narrative or wrong way to deal with this fake narrative or true narrative. For us, we need to deal with these narratives as true. This is my narrative. This is the other, how they receive their narrative. And when we talk about it, we try to find the third narrative. It means Jerusalem, it's an Islamic land. Whatever you say, whatever you try to prove, this is an Islamic land, full stop. Then how to deal with this idea or faith, whatever. Do I have the right to kill anyone come to Jerusalem? It's another issue. So this is what we try to say, how to deal with this narrative and to respect others, to have their own truth or own their narratives. I believe it's a job of a men, not a woman. Women know their place in the house. Robi get crazy now. I am joking, of course. I think Einstein says, when you teach a man, you teach one person. When you teach a woman, you teach the whole society. She is the school. She is our teacher. And so should be educated to create those generations, to feed them with love or hatred, with fear or revenge, whatever. So for that, when they say we are going to talk to the teachers of the schools or the students, I'm very happy, because I believe that we need to teach them so they can teach the soldiers, the kids. Yeah, it is like strange, because really this is the job of the mothers, because the fathers or the men always, they are the fighters, and it's not their job to talk about emotions. I believe it's more stronger when the fathers take this job to talk about peace, to talk about humanity. So it's the same level. Mothers or fathers, as Robi said, it's a hole in the heart. You will never heal. But I believe, because I'm a man, this is my job to continue working and talking every moment, because always Habir appear in front of me to say, don't forget me. I wrote on her grave that your killer will die and you will live longer than him, because I'm going to continue keep talking about you, because it's forbidden to kill kids under any circumstances. In the name of security, democracy, to liberate Palestine, to free Israel, whatever, killing kids is forbidden. So I believe we are the same. mothers and fathers. Of course, each one have his own job. And as I said, I see that the mothers have the main job to raise us and to educate us from the beginning.
But I think that prisoners and fighters are the ones to make peace, because they're the ones that fought. And I think that people don't recognize that the prisoners here, the Palestinian prisoners, if they are not part of a peace agreement, there will not be any peace. This is what happened in Ireland. It's what happened in South Africa. And by making their conditions worse, all you will do is make the situation worse, because until you will get an okay from the prisoners to negotiate, there will never be peace.
In fact, people forget that the prisoners, they are the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian police, all the Palestinian Authority except prisoners in the Israeli jails. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we should have a reconciliation process, which is my dream, the people who will give evidence will be the Palestinians who are in jail, and it will be the soldiers from Combatants for Peace or from Breaking the Silence who will say what they did, and people will decide whether they deserve amnesty or not. This is a very interesting program. I mean, it's just something that I think we have to do, and very soon, is to create this framework. What does it look like when there's a political agreement? We don't want another ceasefire. And this is one of the problems with Ireland, is that they never had a reconciliation process. All they've done, alavai, that we had what they have on the Good Friday Agreement, but it's not peace. It's a very nice peace ceasefire.
Thank you. We're sort of running out of time. I'd like to throw out two other questions that are kind of related. One is about what sort of we as Americans and American Jews, I think that they're all the people who are on this attending this webinar are Jewish, mostly from our synagogue. What is it that we can do in terms of reaching out to our people in this country, people in Israel? Yeah, I don't know if it's an option for us, if it would have to reach out to people in Palestine, Gaza, or the West Bank. So that's one kind of question in terms of what we can do on our end. And also, I think perhaps a related question is, are there specific policies that you as members of the parent circle view as the important policies that might allow Israelis and Palestinians to come together, to reconcile, to live together, that you would like us, if we're reaching out to our government, the Israeli government, to advocate for?
Well, actually, the Parent Circle has done a lot of lobbying in Congress and in the Senate. We were part of this whole new act that has been passed, the Netanyahu Act. I don't know if you know about that, because President Trump, in his great wisdom, decided to stop all cross-border activities and not to fund anything anymore. And it was quite extraordinary, because just as they announced that, then Jared Kushner decided to have this conference in Bahrain about the economic peace deal. After they cut off all our budget, he used my picture and Bassam's picture on the cover of that book. I think that's rather cynical. But I think what you can do is to create an environment where people have hope. And if you would tell them that there are people in Israel and Palestine, it's not only the Parent Circle, there are many organizations working for peace and for reconciliation and for nonviolence. Tell them about these people, get them involved, ask them in their homes to host dialogue meetings, which we can do. Join the ceremony. You know, we have the ceremony every year on Memorial Day. This year, we had 250,000 people watch that ceremony. And if you want to convince somebody that it is possible That's the ceremony to watch, even though many people are against it, even though the powers that be at the time, Netanyahu and Lieberman, tried to stop us having this ceremony where we have Palestinians and Israelis come on Memorial Day for soldiers to tell their stories. So we went to the High Court, and guess what? We won, which was really, I have to tell you, one of a very nice day to win against the government. So there's so much you can tell them about what is really happening. Tell them about also the things about water. For me, this is very prevalent at the moment because combatants for peace tried to take a water tank to a village, Itwani, in the southern hills of Hebron, and they were attacked by Israeli soldiers. They were attacked by Israeli soldiers, Israelis, ex-officers, ex-people who'd been in the army. And these things have to stop. We as Jews need to make moral decisions. We cannot behave like that. We do not have a license to be violent, and we do not have a license to push a 60-year-old man, an Israeli, who came to demonstrate, into a ditch, and then arrest Palestinians, and then in some excuse, shoot 5 Palestinians, which happened today. People must know the truth, but they must also not lose hope, because hope is a very, very important equation in the whole path to some peaceful solution. Sorry, I sound like a preacher. I didn't mean to.
So Jews around the world who have been tasted the bitterness of pain and discrimination and anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, it's forbidden for them especially to keep silent. It's very important. Of course, you will be very useful to refuse any kind of injustice all over the world, and especially when it's come to Israel-Palestine. Because according to the Prophet Muhammad, when he says, support your brother, right or wrong, when they ask him how come to support him when he's wrong, he said to told him the truth, that you are wrong. It's a big responsibility, and I believe you know that the American policy, we are both Israelis and Palestinians, we are victims to the American policy. If you believe it or not, this is the truth, and both of us paying the price of their policy. This is what I told the Americans all the time, especially when I don't have visa like now. Robi will help me in the future. So unfortunately, yeah, this is what I told Mr. John Kerry, that my daughter killed with an American rubber bullet from an American M16, from an American Jeep, and the soldier have been training to America and uniform from America. So everything is American. Please, I don't want to take revenge. I am asked for justice. So it's very important for us to spread this message around your community, and especially the Jewish community. It's very important, even for the Palestinians. Of course, you help the Palestinians when we see Israelis and Jews who are against injustice, even if it's committed by Israel, of course.
And it can't be termed anti-Semitism. This is the thing, you can't use that as an excuse.
Just to ask how many people listening to us?
I don't know, and I hope 21. I think that what is very important is that people understand that I'm not saying these things as a Palestinian. I'm saying these things because I love this country. I paid the highest price you possibly can pay to say the words that I'm saying, and we have to stop killing each other. We cannot go on like this. And you know, Bassam always says, and I will use this too, is that one Palestinian killed my son, not the whole Palestinian nation. And I can assure you that if he would have known David, he would never have killed him. But he didn't know David, so he killed his uniform. That's hard to say.
Thank you. This has been very, very powerful to listen to and to deal with. This session has been recorded. So it will live on beyond this moment, and I hope it will be shared for people who couldn't make it today. So we've had over 20 people on this program, but hopefully this will ripple out and be available and meaningful to other people going forward. I want to encourage everyone to educate themselves again, as it's been said, and go to the Parents Circle website. And it's going to be coming up any minute now, any second now, in the chat and on the screen. But it's not hard to Google. If you Google Parent Circle, you will find it immediately. There's a tremendous amount of information there. That organization, as you heard, if you feel that it's something that is doing good work, it requires a lot of support. You can send donations straight to them. If you want to send it to my discretionary fund, I will be delighted to forward, if you earmark those donations. And full disclosure, I have also used my discretionary fund at my own discretion to support the Parent Circle. So this is God's work. The only way we're going to make peace here is if we join hands together to do this. To respect each other, to accept each other as human beings. That's what it's all about. Everything else is commentary. So I want to thank our speakers, Bassam and Robi. I want to thank Audrey and Sarita for coordinating this and making it happen, to Anita, who had to leave, to John Lasseter, who is behind the scenes always making the technical stuff happen. So thank you to everyone, and shalom, salam.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's the in the chat. Everybody can click onto the chat, and there it is, www.theparentscircle.org. Okay.
And Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Let it be a
Chag
wonderful
Sameach.
holiday, a time of rejoicing for the entire world. The Chol Yoshvei Tevel, for everyone who lives in this beleaguered planet of ours. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bless you.